Ethan,
I heard my mom shout from downstairs.
it's time to get up. We gotta go.
I tossed and turned in bed, groggy with just barely enough energy to lift my eyelids a sliver. Daylight poured through my bedroom window and reflexively made me shut my eyes again.
Ethan, we need to go, now.
My mom shouted, more empathetically this time. "Coming," I hollered back, as I rolled out of bed and trekked to the bathroom. I grabbed my toothbrush and squirted some toothpaste on the end. As I brushed, I looked myself in the mirror. I looked like a real mess, hair going every which way, eyes barely open and crusted on both sides. I stumbled over to the shower and got the water started. What was the point of showering the day of camp, anyway? I'd just get all gross and dirty regardless. I quickly finished my shower, threw some clothes on, and ran downstairs.
We're going to be late. I hope they don't leave without you.
My mom said in a disapproving tone.
The car's packed. We just need to go.
Okay, I said, as I hurried out the door to the car. 7:59 a.m. We got to my school bus just in time. My mom yelled goodbye and love you out the window as I sprinted to the chaperone of my group. "Ethan, you sure know how to make loading a bus suspenseful," Miss Twinkle grumbled as she peered over her glasses at me. I hopped on the bus and sat next to my friend, Dave, who was still saving a seat for me with his backpack, knowing I'd be late. The 3-hour bus ride was uneventful and flew by as Dave and I talked about what the next 2 weeks would be like. Every summer since we were in first grade, we'd gone on this camping trip together. This year, though, we had more freedom to do the activities we wanted, mostly on our own, too. Pulling up to Camp Widowee felt more nostalgic every year. The smell of pine trees, the sound of rushing rivers, all the memories of past summers came flooding back. We unloaded the bus and carried our bags to the cabins. The boys all slept in 2 large cabins on the one side of the dusty dirt path leading through the campgrounds. The girls had 2 cabins on the other side. Dave and I claimed our usual bunk and threw our bags on the bed. After everyone grabbed a bed, we all lined up outside for the introduction and safety talk. I've heard this talk so many times I could give it myself. Blah blah buddy system, blah blah fire safety. New summer, same lame speech. I looked around at the other guys. They looked bored as hell too. All the usual guys were there. Austin, Tyler, Mason. We'd grown close over the years. Tommy, Zach, Kevin, we'd have so many fun times here. Jack, Jesse, and the new kid in school, Lucas. I heard he just moved here last month from somewhere down south. He seemed like a nice enough guy. After the long spiel, we all got together to catch up. It had only been 2 weeks since school let out, but we still felt like we needed to fill each other in on any recent events. Our lives as junior high schoolers were fast-paced, you know. I could tell Lucas felt a bit out of place, so I cut into the rapid-fire discussion. Hey, you're Lucas, right?" I said to try to get him into the conversation. Lucas looked over at me as everyone else grew silent. His eyes were an icy, electric blue that almost seemed to glow as I looked into them. They were the most mesmerizing eyes I'd ever seen. Lucas smiled at everyone and introduced himself. "Yeah, I'm Lucas. My friends back home call me Luke. I know I really don't know you guys, and you don't know me, but I was hoping this trip would help me make some friends before school started," he said, his voice growing more confident as he spoke. Everyone prepped Luke a question. "Where are you from? What's it like there? Are the girls really hotter? What do you like to do?" Luke happily answered all the questions we threw at him. We went to the mess hall for lunch and continued talking and getting to know Luke. After lunch, we headed back to our cabins to get changed for our first hike. Luke had the bunk right across from mine. We chatted for a bit before heading outside to join the group. The hike was incredible. We reached the top of the mountain just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. What a gorgeous view. We started a fire and roasted marshmallows before heading back down the mountain. Everyone had their flashlights and headlamps on. Our one leader led the way while the other took up the rear. We were about halfway down when I heard it. Someone from our group screamed at the top of their lungs in agony. We all looked around as the leaders rushed towards the scream. Being curious and scared kids, we followed our leaders to Jack. He was lying on the ground with 2 puncture wounds in his left leg, right above his ankle. Luke was sitting beside him trying to keep him calm. Jack's wounds started to swell and redden as we watched our leaders care for him. "What happened?" our one leader asked Jack. "I don't know. I stepped off a rock and felt a sharp pain, like a bite," Jake said shakily. Luke chimed in. "I think I saw a snake slithering by after he screamed." "Did you see what kind?" the other leader asked. "I don't really know. It was black and red, maybe some yellow," Luke answered. "Crap. That might be poisonous. Let's get him down from here into the hospital," the other leaders said. The leaders lifted Jack up and carried him down the rest of the way. When we reached the bottom, an ambulance was waiting for Jack. Of all those hikes we'd done in the past, we never had a snake encounter. I didn't even know that mountain had snakes. As we turned in for the night, we were all worried about Jack. It was tough to fall asleep, so we all stayed up talking and joking. Zach and Jesse wanted to start a truth or dare game, so that helped us get through an hour or two before we heard a knock on our cabin. That startled us. It was about 11 p.m. according to my watch. The door creaked open. Our leader came in looking exhausted. "I have some news on Jack. First off, he's gonna be fine. They gave him some anti-venom at the hospital. Luke's description helped a lot, I'm told. Jack should be back in a day or two." Our leader rambled off. "I gotta say, first snakebite I've seen in those mountains. But glad he's gonna be okay. Hopefully you boys can get some rest." With that, he exited our cabin, closing the door behind him. Aside from that crazy night, the first week was uneventful. We did everything from archery to fishing. It was the second week that was unusual, to say the least. Monday night, my friends Kevin and Mason talked about going for a sunrise hike and asked if I wanted to join them. I was feeling more in the mood to kayak that day, so I declined their offer. Luke said he'd go with them, though. I spent the day on the lake kayaking with a few other guys and girls. We headed back to the shore just before dinner. We walked as a group to the mess hall, ready for a well-deserved dinner. When we walked in, everyone seemed to be in a frenzy. Everyone was talking about something. Was it Jack? Was he back already? That wasn't it. I sat down and asked someone what was going on. "You haven't heard? Kevin slipped and fell off the mountaintop. He must have stepped on a loose rock or something. But he went over the side and landed on a ledge like 10 or 15 feet below. Thank God for that, too, or else, well, you know." He paused. "They took him away like an hour ago. Surprised he didn't see the flashing lights." I sat there, stunned. Camp was always fun, but painfully uneventful. Well, except for the occasional pranks and crazy truth or dare games. Nothing like this ever happened before. "How'd he get down from the mountain?" I blurted out. "Well, Mason was way ahead of him. He said he heard someone shouting for help and ran back. Luke was already lowering himself down the ledge on a rope that I guess he packed," he recounted. I was a little confused, but let him continue. "Mason said Luke lifted Kevin onto his shoulders and climbed back up where they waited for help." I thanked him for filling me in and got up to get some food. Meatloaf tonight. Not my favorite, but I wasn't exactly hungry anymore. I grabbed my tray and looked around the mess hall. I caught Luke's eyes from a distance and saw a group gathered around him, presumably trying to get all the details. Luke rolled his eyes as people continued to crowd around him. I walked over and joined them, making my way through the crowd. I set my tray down next to Luke and tapped him on the shoulder. "You want to get out of here?" I asked him. Without saying a word, he got up and started walking toward the door with me. Thankfully, no one followed us outside.
So, I guess you heard by now too?
Luke asked with a half smile.
I heard parts of it,
I said with a half chuckle.
You sound like a hero, man.
I'm hardly a hero. Just the right place at the right time, he said as he shrugged. I'm just glad I was there and could help. Our leader came running up the path. We asked what was going on, and he stopped in front of us. Out of breath, he said,
"Mess hall. I'll explain."
We went back inside after him. He got up on one of the tables, cupped his hands around his mouth, and yelled,
"Hey, everyone, listen up."
The mess hall gradually simmered down. He waited to catch his breath before continuing. "A lot of you asked about what happened today in the mountains. We just heard from the hospital. Kevin's fine. He'll need back surgery, but he's stable and in good spirits." He took a breath, then went on. "Please, everyone, pay attention to your surroundings. Be cautious and safe. We're only here for a few more days. Let's make the best of them." He climbed off the table and left the mess hall. Almost immediately, the hall erupted in talks about Kevin again. Luke and I went back to the cabin and talked more about Kevin, which then evolved into answering questions about and giving tips for the upcoming school year. A little while later, the rest of the guys returned and we all got ready for bed. Tomorrow I'd be going fishing. I was so excited for a super relaxing and chill day. The next morning, a few of us headed out to the lake with rods, tackle, and bait. We set up our gear and cast off, then sat back and waited for a bite. All of us took turns saying what we were most excited for in junior high. A few of us had good catches. We spent all day fishing. The time flew by. We packed up everything and made our way back to the cabin. We showed off our catches to our friends, then put them back on ice. They'd make a good dinner for sure. That night, we sat around a huge bonfire and sang together. Luke on my one side, Austin on the other. Even that SpongeBob song. We were all happy and enjoyed the night. We locked arms and sang, "Let there be peace on earth." This wasn't a Christian or a religious camp or anything like that, but we were all from the same Catholic high school. Why we chose that song, I don't know. Maybe it was our way of praying for our injured friends. While singing, I looked around and everyone had the biggest smile on their faces. I didn't see Luke's face, and I didn't hear him singing either. That's no big deal. Lots of people at our school weren't religious or even Christian. After a few more songs, we grabbed some marshmallows and sticks and stuck them in the fire. S'mores night was always my favorite night. What could beat dessert, a nice fire, and good friends? Austin and I were engaged in a heated debate about the most efficient way to get a girl's attention when I heard someone yell. Not again, I thought. My eye started towards what looked like a flaming arm flapping back and forth. Tyler. Tyler's arm was on fire. He dropped to the ground and rolled around, just like the classic phrase said. After successfully extinguishing his arm, Tyler got up and examined the damage. He had really bad burns all the way from his hands to his mid-bicep. The leaders called for an ambulance and iced his arm. Most of the guys were in shock. My mind was racing. What was going on? That night, I barely slept. And from what I could tell, that was the case for most of the guys. Seeing our friend's arm on fire, and then the burns, that was almost unbearable. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because I woke up to the sound of sirens. I checked my phone. 5:17 a.m. I remember that time exactly, because what followed was impossible to forget. All of us sprinted out of our cabin. We gathered between the 4 cabins on the dirt path. There was a lot of noise and chatter and commotion. I didn't know where to look or what to think. 6 EMTs made their way by us with gurneys heading towards the lake. We all waited and kept speculating about what was going on. After what felt like an eternity, the EMTs came back hastily with full gurneys. From the looks of it, all 3 guys were unconscious. 2 had bandages wrapped around their heads. All of them had collars around their necks. Our leaders came by, shaking their heads. I'm not sure who it was, but one of them started speaking. It looks like some of your friends decided to go for a night swim. Well, more like night dive. They hit their heads, and they had to go to the hospital. Since we'd all seen them get wheeled by, the shock value here was considerably less. Our leader continued. But, on a brighter note, Tyler's doing well. He paused again. So, that's where we are. He and the other leaders went back to their cabin. We returned to our home, too. Head injuries are serious, and things don't look too great. I climbed into bed and checked my phone. It was just before 6 a.m. when I decided to text Tyler and see how he was feeling. I didn't expect a response since it was so early, so I put my phone away and laid down. Next thing I knew, it was bright and early in the morning. I was only half awake and checked my phone. Tyler responded. He said he was feeling much better and his arm was totally bandaged up. I asked if he wanted to talk about what happened. The general gist of it was the fire shot out of him. He claimed he was the same distance as all of us from the fire. There was no wind. How the fire got to him was anyone's guess. Interestingly, Tyler mentioned Luke was next to him when it happened. He remembered feeling Luke pushing him back before the fire shot him. If it weren't for Luke, Tyler would have had burns all over his torso and face for sure. We exchanged a few more texts before I had to run to breakfast. After the week we had, I was really looking forward to enjoying our last day of camp. I just wanted to take it easy swimming and kayaking. Two of my favorite activities. Back at the cabin, I changed into my swimsuit. I checked my phone again. Tyler texted me a few times. The text talked about how he remembered Luke saying something like, "Not yet," before he pushed him away. Not yet. What did he mean? What did he know? How did he know? I stopped myself. What was I thinking? This was obviously nothing. Nonetheless, I decided to text Kevin and asked if he remembered anything else about his fall. Then I headed back out in my kayak. The sky was free of clouds. The rays of sun felt warm as they gradually tanned my skin. I felt so at peace on the water. I decided to paddle back to shore after what I estimated to be 2 hours. I checked my phone again. Kevin's text flashed on my screen. His texts were rather unenlightening, with the exception of one. He mentioned that before he fell, he thought he heard a voice say something, which he thinks might have spooked him enough to knock him off balance. After digging deeper, he recalled hearing the words, "Not yet." I dropped my phone and froze. This was far too odd to be just a coincidence. My mind had jumped from thought to thought, none of them particularly good. I tried to clear my mind and relax by cleaning myself up and grabbing some food. I couldn't stop running through the different scenarios. After chatting with some people about unrelated things, I started to feel better. I left the mess hall with some guys, and we all jumped in our beds to chill together one last time before heading home tomorrow. Looking down to check my phone, I saw it was after 10 p.m. already. This day really went by too fast. As much fun as I had, and as crazy as this trip was, I was excited to go back home and sleep in my own bed. Around midnight, we all officially hit the sack. I barely thought about anything at all. Sweet dreams, here we come. Something woke me up. Was it a noise? A nightmare? No, neither. My arms and legs felt heavy, almost sunken into the bed. I felt like I couldn't move. I could feel my heart rate accelerating as I tried to sit up, but couldn't. I tried to open my eyes, and finally they flipped open. I probably should have kept them closed. There, standing over me in bed, with his icy blue eyes piercing my soul, and his sinister grin spreading from ear to ear. You, I thought. Of course it was you. My heart was pounding through my chest as I laid there. paralyzed by fear or something worse. After what felt like an agonizing eternity, Luke spoke. He whispered in a voice that sounded like icicles shattering on the sidewalk. "Not yet." I watched helplessly as he reached over me and placed his hand on my chest. At that moment, it felt like an 18-wheeler slammed into my chest. I swear my heart stopped. I shot up in bed, screaming as I opened my eyes. My heart was racing. I was covered in sweat. I mustered some courage and looked around. I was alone. This was my room. I clawed around my bed for my phone. 3:33 a.m. I did a double take at the date. December 13th. I turned all the lights on in my room and sat up trying to figure everything out. I must have been up for hours by the time I heard my mom call up the stairs.
Ethan, breakfast.
I slowly made my way down the steps and lit up when I saw my mom in the kitchen. I raced around the counter and gave her a massive bear hug. "What in the world is that for?" she asked. "I'm not complaining about you hugging your mom, though." "I'm just so happy to see you," I blurted out. "Well, okay then. I'll take a hug for any reason," she said, smiling. I let go and went to grab some orange juice from the fridge. As I closed the door, I noticed my mom hung some Christmas cards on there. It made me ecstatic to see my friends and their families there. Mixed in were some funeral cards. I checked the names: Jack, Kevin, and Tyler. I started feeling lightheaded and dizzy. I sat down at the table for a second and quickly Googled my friends' names. I found the news articles right away. All three of them died in a car accident at 3 a.m. on a back road just 2 weeks ago. It was a one-car accident. No other cars involved, no survivors. Authorities think the car swerved into the median after hitting a patch of black ice while traveling at a high rate of speed. Images of the wreck were hard to look at. The whole front of the car was completely compressed and the entire car erupted in flames. My friends died, and I wasn't even aware. How could this be? I got up for my second attempt at getting orange juice. Just by the ice marker, one Christmas card jumped out at me. I froze. There, in the center of the card, were two icy blue eyes staring back at me. At the bottom of the card read, "Happy Holidays, from Crystal, Damien, and Luke DeMorty." I could feel my chest tighten and my pulse quicken, but I managed to string together a mumble. Who sent this?" My mom looked at me sideways, obviously confused. She replied, "That's the guy you met at summer camp last summer, silly. He moved here just before that, and ever since, you two have been inseparable. You trying to quiz me on your friends?" She laughed. I, however, was not laughing. I was petrified. I searched through my texts, and then I found it. A convo with Luke that I didn't recall ever starting. 9:42 p.m. yesterday. The last text message I sent him. "Hey, you ready to go to the movies?" 9:44 p.m. His last message. "Not yet."